Hello guys and welcome back to my channel The BI Masters. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about what it takes to successfully deliver a project in Microsoft Fabric. Now, whether you're a data engineer or you're a Power BI developer, you are already working on a project in Microsoft Fabric, or you want to get into a project in Microsoft Fabric, I'm going to discuss about all the topics that is required for you to deliver a successful solution in Fabric. Now, before we do that, if you're new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe. Watch this video to the end because there's a lot of topics I'm going to cover in depth. People who don't know me, my name is Prathamesh Sable, and I've been working on Microsoft Fabric over 2 years in delivering solutions to a lot of my clients across the globe. I'm a certified trainer in Microsoft Power BI, Power Platform, and Fabric, and I've been extensively working in this industry for around 18 plus years. And in the organization that I work with, I head the Center of Excellence covering this Microsoft practice. Now, before we start off with the topic, how many of you really think that Microsoft Fabric is really an upcoming tool that is going to change or bring a shift in the market? Please let me know in the comments. Right? And how do you think your current skills will be essential to deliver solutions? Also comment on that. Now, let's start about the most important topic when you're working or you want to work in Microsoft Fabric. Now, the first topic is look at the business lens or the business angle of why a customer is choosing Microsoft Fabric to solve its problem. Now, one of the important things that you need to think through is, when you're working on a project in data engineering or cloud-based projects like PaaS, projects or SaaS projects, so you need to think about why the customer is really getting into it. He can easily build a data lake as the concept is in, or databases, but why Microsoft Fabric or why Databricks or why Snowflake? So these are the solutions or these are the products that are very, very, very important and they are existing in the market and they can do wonders. Here I'm going to talk especially about Microsoft Fabric itself because it stitches all the different sources together. Brings in everything. It's unified and you can do a lot of more things. And I'm going to cover all of these topics, how we can achieve it. Now, you need to understand one of the key things that the customer is trying to address is the problem of data silos. A lot of times across the projects that I have worked across with, I have seen that there are a lot of multiple systems from which data is being ingested. Now, it could be a SAP system, it could be ERP, it could be Dynamics 365, it could be independent databases like SQL, Oracle, Postgres. It can also be APIs or it can also be data coming in flat files. A lot of vendor systems, they allow customers to export data into flat files and then, you would build the reporting. But this data, once you bring into a reporting tool like Power BI or Click or Tableau, it just stays in there. You really can't do more with that data. What if you want to consolidate everything together? Obviously, you can build in semantic models and then provide the semantic models to others. But what if you want to use it for downstream applications? You really can't do that. You can't expose a lot of APIs or you cannot control the data because your semantic model holds everything. Object level security, column level security, all these things are taken into considerations. So you need to think about one of the key things. What is the problem that customer is trying to solve? One, whether is it my data is all siloed, I want to bring everything, I want to unify everything into a central system. Second, how are the business users going to consume? Because majority of this data that sits in these ecosystems are always going to be consumed by reporting. How frequently is the need of bringing this data together or getting this data readily available for the end user via reporting? Or if I am having a data analytics department in my team, I have a lot of data scientists, I want to do machine learning. How this data is going to be used by them to create analytical solutions? Or also in this world of AI, how you want to leverage this data in my bots or agents or AI agents or agentic AI frameworks and so on. So for all this, you need to have data centralized and data kind of governed, curated that is readily available for all these solutions. This is the most important topic. Before you start any project, think about this and also try to understand what is your role in the project. Are you only going to look at reporting? Are you going to only look at data engineering, data factory, governance, administration, or agentic framework? You need to really think about that. Now, you cannot do everything at once, but the whole intent is you need to understand the crux of it. Now, that's the first thing. As a part of your role, you need to understand the problem that the customer is facing. You need to understand that, And then come to the second piece of it. Now, if you are having data sitting in silos, you want to bring everything unified. Now, obviously in Fabric, we talk a lot about medallion architecture, and I want to do, bronze, silver, gold, and I want to use this gold layer for reporting and so on. But really, you need to think about how this data is going to flow in. This is the most important thing of when you're looking at your data engineering piece. I'm not talking about data factory. Data factory comes in later, but you need to think about how your medallion architecture is going to be. Now, before even you go to the medallion architecture, when you bring this data in, you need to really think about one important topic is how are you going to store this data and secure this data. First, how are you going to keep this data into different areas? So, these areas in Fabric to achieve bring data coming in from finance should be stored in my finance area. Data coming from HR, I want to store in HR, and so on. I can keep it in different areas. And now these areas comprises of this architecture, which we call as a data mesh, where you are bringing data and then segregating data as per departments, and where you can cross-share data. Now, this is actually covered in Fabric using the concept of data domains. So, domains in Microsoft Fabric helps you to bring data and then organize data as per a specific area. So, if, for example, I have data coming in from HR and I want to store this data, I'll store this data into HR domain. Now, obviously in HR, I might have details about the employees. I will have details about salaries of the employees. I don't want to share this data with a data scientist guy because I don't know what he's going to do with that. This is important data which is confidential. Now that is why data can be stored into different domains. Now within these different domains, you can then tag in your independent workspaces. So you need to think about what workspaces you want to define and how this data is going to be shared across this multiple domains and across workspaces. That is first point. Now, when you think about workspace creation, whether you need to have a development layer wherein you will put in, development or staging data, you need to have test layer where you want to test everything, and you have a production layer data that you are going to use for your live data sets, live data feeding in. These are the key things that you need to think through. Now, again, when you're designing these workspaces with your domains, you need to understand who is going to access what. Data engineers will be only accessing the data workspaces. You can create your own ETL workspace where you are only going to ingest. You're only going to use data pipelines notebook. So you can keep the orchestration separate from the data layer, and and then within that, where the data engineer is going to have which users are going to access data from these workspaces and so on. So this is very crucial. Then post that once you're bringing in data in, you need to think about, as we spoke about, the medallion architecture. Bronze, silver, gold. Within bronze, you'll have the data which is in its raw form, as we call it. Then the silver is much more about the transformed or the cleansed form. And the curated layer is the data which is more in the aggregated, summarized form that is readily available for reporting. Now, when you think about this as well, you need to think about a lot of topics in mind. Like when I'm bringing data in from my ERP systems or databases, I'm going to bring in historical data. Now, when I'm bringing in historical data, I have a capacity X in Microsoft Fabric. For example, I take F64, which is pretty standard that all the enterprise customers look at. Now, whether when I'm bringing this historical data, what is the size of my data that I'm going to bring in? How huge is that data? How many number of tables I'm going to bring in? I'll give you a simple example. When I'm working in healthcare, there are around 20,000 plus tables we try to bring in. Now, when you think about this large volume of data and the data size is at least 300 to 400 gigs of data that comes in. Now, is my capacity enough? Or even if I'm bringing data in F64, I'm bringing in tables. Is it feasible for me to bring the entire table directly? Because it is going to consume a lot of my capacity. Or I need to bring data in chunks. When I say chunks, it is more about should I bring in data in batches for certain years, most recent year, or I want to bring data for, historically for set of years. Need to think about that. That's very crucial when you do the data ingestion. Because what happens is, if you develop a activity that brings in data, the problem is you're going to impact the Fabric capacity at a whole. And now if the capacity is down, you really would not be able to do anything. Then your entire day is wasted. So you have to think about that when you're working on bringing this data in. That's first part. Secondly, when you're looking at it, you need to think about this data that I'm bringing in. What is the incremental load that I'm going to have in all these tables? what is big, because depending on the size of the tables, you also need to think about what is the volume of data that is coming in every day. And that will help you determine how data is going to incrementally come. Then we need to also think about how the data, when I'm capturing it incrementally, how is the data change captured? Now, change data capture is very wide topic, but again, I'll shorten it. So either you can have watermark columns to say if my data is updated, I have a timestamp, or I have a column that helps me identify that this particular record is changed. You need to think about that. Also, a lot of times what happens is you will face a lot of customers which will not have any watermark column. They would say I have a table with 100 million records, and I don't have any way to capture it or which column is getting updated. I don't have that. It's a problem with the system, but you need to think about a solution. How are you going to deliver that as well? It could be handling deletes, it could be handling record updates, and so on. So this is where you need to think about incremental. A lot of times what happens in retail or healthcare, backdated data gets updated. So this is what we call as backfills. So how are you going to take care of the process which are handling backfills? This is again, you need to think about how you are going to set up your pipelines to ensure the backfills are orchestrated. Now all this data is going to sit into bronze. From bronze, you are going to bring this data into silver, cleanse it, and then further aggregate it for reporting. Now we have to think about a downstream process from bronze to silver, silver to gold. If the data change is happening, to what extent from bronze to silver it is going to get impacted? It should not be that I'm running a bronze pipeline and post that I want to run a silver pipeline and then I need to have a gold pipeline. What if I'm looking at, for the same example I gave, 20,000 tables? I might need to have 100 tables which are required for me immediately for reporting. So I need to think about a process that will automatically, once my bronze data is being processed, my bronze 100 tables are ready, automatically silver should be processed and automatically gold should be processed because that set is available for reporting. I don't want to keep the user waiting, okay, I'm 20,000 tables are running and then you will get the data. You need to understand that problem statement for the user as well, how important it is for, kind of looking at bringing data and making it available as soon as it's ready in your fabric lake houses and warehouses. So this is the key topic that you need to look at. Second thing is about, when you're implementing pipelines or Dataflow Gen2s or copy jobs with Microsoft Fabric, just don't think about it. I'm just going to do it one time. You need to think about a framework, which I call is that as an ingestion framework. So this ingestion framework has to be scalable. This has to be configurable, and it has to be meta driven, because once you write the code, we really don't like people going and changing our code unless there is a need for it. It has to be all meta driven. When I say meta driven, you have to look at creating configuration tables. This configuration table will hold all your information that you're going to pass it through your pipelines, pass it as parameters into your notebooks, and the execution happens. This is very, very, very crucial, guys. Understand this. We have worked across projects where we had seen things growing up big time because the frameworks were not defined properly, or it was very initial stage of fabric where libraries were not there, and then variable libraries were introduced. We did variable parameters and parameters under notebooks and so on. So you need to think about that, how your pipelines are going to be orchestrated. Also, when I want to use a data flow gen 2, when I want to use a data pipeline, within data pipeline, how I'm going to handle the parallelism of, execution. So, for example, I'm bringing in 500 tables. Now, what is the limit of a pipeline that it can handle? How much parallel execution it can handle? When I'm looking at data flow gen 2, how much custom columns can I create? Or when I'm looking at the copy job, whether the data type is being mapped properly or not. Because a lot of times in the data sets that you will get, you will observe a lot of changes on the data types, especially when data coming from, spreadsheets. Not all the times you'll get data proper. There might be, empty records, nulls, date time changes. When you are bringing data from Oracle, there's a data type change that Delta in Fabric Lakehouses cannot handle. There are obviously data types that are compared, but you need to think about all of that. Like for example, time value in string, time value in Oracle or SQL database is not available in Lakehouse in Microsoft Fabric. Now you can change that to a string and then further cast it when you're working on the cleanse layer in Silver. So these are all the things you need to think through when you're bringing data in. Also, one of the key things when you're bringing data in, you also need to think about what sensitive data that I have and what data needs to be exposed to which end user. or which data engineer also. Like for example, I give you example about HR, about salaries. I don't want the data and scientists to know what my salary is. I need to kind of ensure that I mask that data when I bring that in. Also, because Fabric provides encryption at rest, TLS encryption 1.3, you need to think about encryption as well. And once the data lands into your bronze layer, now from here, what data you need to pass into silver, what data you need to pass into gold. And within that, different business users will also ask for data. Like, HR analysts might require data for employees for processing. They might need to categorize the salaries into bucket, but do you really need an employee name for that? Think about that. Or when you're working into manufacturing, I can get the order ID, but I don't want to really know what the customer is because data is sensitive in that sense. I don't want a data scientist to know. And this is how data leaks happen. People in the organization might steal data. So this is where we classify data into PI, person identification, and we also need to think about how data is going to be, like social security number, credit cards when you're working in banking, because that data is there. We don't really want to say what that, credit cards details are there. So you need to think about that as well. Now, when you come back to the orchestration of orchestration of your data, you can have your pipelines, as I said earlier. You can store the pipelines separately in a different workspace. That's the orchestration area. And you can keep the data layer separate, which is my data area. In this way, you will control both. You will be able to have a control on both of that ends. Now, when you're doing the pipelines, as I said, understand the parallelism. For example, copy job, 50 batch processes, 50 parallelism, 50 parallel tables at one it can process. That's a limit. But you need to think about a process. If my 50 tables are complete and I have 100 tables, the 51st table should come immediately after that. So you need to think about sequential processing versus parallel processing. You need to understand whether I need to pass in a stored procedure and how the stored procedure is going to work, how the stored procedure is going to handle my next level of process. So think about that as well. If you're bringing in data from APIs, you need to understand the limits of APIs. How frequently you want the data. Just don't hit everything and bring in every second, because the API might not give you anything. The data might come in every 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Understand the need. Think about how frequently the customer needs the data and then bring that in. So this is very important when you talk about meta-driven orchestration, or you need to have dependency notebooks, dependency tables, table A is dependent on table B. Think about that as well. How dependency is going to be handled when it comes on bringing data in as well. So a lot of times what happens is I'm talking about, process where we know, right, where we know as backfills. Once in 6 months, backdate data get updated. Now you don't want to give a full downtime to a process that actually, halts your entire ingestion, and I'm taking care of the backdate data first and then I'm going to put the run in my process. You need to think about practically how we're going to solve that. So one way of solving that is, you need to have, you can create parallel pipelines, and you can create, bring data, update data in chunks every year, every 6 months, like, for the backend data, you need to do that. So think about that process as well. Other important aspect is, as I mentioned, about data sharing. When I talk about data sharing, there are a lot of things. When we spoke about data masking, I can then mask the data using hashing, and I can mask the person information, because so that I don't expose the employee name or banking accounts or so on with the data scientist or the end users. Second thing I can also think about is, Microsoft is also releasing one like security, which is in preview state, but it's a worth topic to look at. In one like security, you can actually control the columns, control the tables that you want to share. Like for example, I'm into HR and I have a data science domain. He's going to bring data from, finance. He's going to bring data from HR. Now I want to control the tables that I want to share from my entire lakehouse, because my lakehouse can hold, a number of tables. Now from this, I just want to share a specific set. I don't want to share a lakehouse directly with him. I'll just only share the tables that I want to share. And then on the column level security, within this table, what columns I need to share. I can also even control that with knowledge security. So this is very key, very crucial that you need to think about it. Once this is done, your data is available, ready for sharing, and you are able to share it effectively and via pipelines. Now, one of the important topics you need to also think about it is governance. When you are working on this, how are you practically going to govern this data? Microsoft Fabric provides, logs, monitoring logs, your real time, where you can govern what's happening, who's accessing what. But another element of Microsoft, or another product of Microsoft, which is called Purview, that helps you in establishing governance, scanning your assets, understanding which information is critical, which information is relevant to the business at every layer, who is going to access that, who needs access to what kind of data, all that is covered. Also, you need to think about other topic which I'm going to really stress upon is when you're defining workspace. What is the level of workspace access you want to give for everyone? Do you want to give it a viewer access? Do you want to give it a contributor, member, or administration? Depends upon data, how data is going to get shared in the organization or access in the organization. So think about it very wisely. So this is where it helps you in terms of unifying or making your data estate a lot stronger once this data is available. Now the next topic is about semantic model creation. How am I going to create semantic models on top of it? Am I going to bring data from all the sources and create a governed semantic model or a consolidated semantic model, or I'm going to create independent data marts and semantic models for those data marts in my gold layer? Because this semantic models, I'm going to expose it for reporting. Now, this exposing for reporting can be done either via direct lake or either via SQL endpoint using import. So you need to think about that. Whether if the data is summarized, I can directly expose it via direct click, or the user can query that view that I'll create in my gold layer via direct query, or I can import and keep the semantic model separate. Now the reason behind this is, as Microsoft Fabric provides direct click, you can use this semantic model into a Power BI report. You can also use this model into a data agent. Now, the topic of data agent I've covered. I've already done a video on data agents, which I'm going to pin in this video as well for you to look at. But data agents are a powerful way of looking at or analyzing the data that you are you want to create data marts upon. Data agents helps you to create SQL queries. It helps you to analyze it and give you insights from the data. If you're correcting a semantic model, it also helps you to create DAX queries on top of it, which you can use in a DAX query view. So it is very important. That helps a lot. That makes your life a lot easier. Also, when you're building a semantic model, you need to really think about one of the key important topics, or one of the key important things is, do you need to prep your model ready for AI? Because AI is a need, right? Everybody wants to do chatbots. Because you're into Microsoft Fabric and Copilot is enabled, again, it depends upon your tenant, how your Copilot is enabled or not. But if your Copilot is enabled, for every measure, dimension, columns, you can create descriptions for the semantic model. And within the semantic model, there is a setting where you can enable this data readily available for AI, so that when you are creating reports and when you're creating Copilot, or when you're using Copilot on top of it, it needs to have that information readily available so that it can process it accordingly. So that's the key topic that you need to look at. Also, when you're looking at creating semantic models or creating reporting visualizations, you need to think about a lot of topics in mind, a lot of things in mind, such as if I'm looking at a visualization, is my visualization going to load in 5 to 10 seconds? Or if it's a heavy data set I'm going to bring into the table, and if the calculation is complex, is the visualization going to have impact? Now, a lot of times, when you're working on Power BI reporting, we say that, data is heavy, I don't want to do these calculations. Can you bring these calculations back to the source in your core data mart and you can expose it from there into the semantic model? You have to think about that as well. So this covers about the semantic models. Then once you're in report, how you can leverage Copilot within Microsoft Power BI, or the standalone Copilot, where you can stitch your data agents or reports and give access to the users so that they can directly leverage Copilot for these reports. So in that way, you can help on that. Now, another extended way of combining that is, when we are talking about the age of AI, you can use this data agent or semantic models, or I would say a data agent, and you can stitch it into Microsoft Copilot Studio. I've done another video on Copilot Studio integration with data agents. You can look at that as well. How you can leverage this data and then put this into Copilot Studio agent, and leverage this agent into Microsoft Teams. So in this way, you're stitching this data, you are ensuring everything is readily available. And this is all about practical experiences which we have worked on Microsoft Fabric, and we have given solutions to the customer. So you need to really think about Fabric as a solution to your customer and not as a technology. Because as I said, we put technology first, but think solution first. How are you going to mitigate all these problems? You need to look at creating ERD diagrams, architectural diagrams. If you have architects who are already creating this, read through those architecture documents, understand what are they trying to put into play, how data is secured, how data is covered, because these are very crucial for the organization, and you guys are responsible for delivering this solution as an organization or as a team. It's very important. You have to put your thought process and mind in place when you're doing this kind of projects. Yep. One of the last things that I would like to say, always in the organization you have, if you are having a separate workspace where you want to learn Microsoft Fabric, it is good. But you should not request your organization to create a learning workspace for you, where you can try out this smaller proof of concepts, proof of values, or I would say, or do smaller MVPs, where you can test all these things, and then once you're ready, then you can implement this as a part of your large scale solutions that you work at. We have created ingestion frameworks for databases. We have created ingestion framework for files, which we have to just now use plug and play. You have to just take the pipelines and then import it into our customer's environment using Git, and they are ready to use. So these pipelines can be any Excel, CSV, XML, JSON files. We can directly plug and play through architecture. We can do that. So these are all reusable components. Think about how you can make Fabric more reusable. Don't allow people handle the code, you know, because once the code is finalized, defined, it has to be all via meta-driven pipeline. So this is what the key things that you need to look at. Also, for your learning, look at the Fabric roadmap. Look at what's coming in, what is planned in the upcoming quarter, what is the downstream plan for Microsoft Fabric. Think about that. Learn about that. See what's new. Try experimenting this, because this is very crucial when you work on these projects. And if you are able to cover all of these things together, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to deliver a successful project in Microsoft Fabric. And I would not say it's my guarantee, but I can assure you that it will be very helpful as a part of your learning curve. So if you're new in a project, if you are already into a project, think about all these topics. List down all the 10 points that you want to look at, like business problem, medallion architecture, meta-driven orchestration of pipeline, administration and governance, data sharing, then Power BI direct click reporting, agentic framework for downstream applications using Microsoft Fabric, and then last but not the least, your workspace like learning and enablement. So these are like the 9 topics that is very essential for you to think through when you're working on Microsoft Fabric project or any data engineering project, if I put it as well. But this will help you to be very strong in the industry. As you know, the industry is changing and there's a lot of demand for engineers like you. With this, I would like to close this video today. Let me know what you think about this video. Please comment. I know it's a lengthy video, but let me know in your comments what you think about this. If there any specific topic you want me to cover in detail. And until then, thank you so much, guys. You have a lovely rest of the week, and cheers.